Margherita, I have just introduced you and your presentation on why community management for science. So please, if you would turn on your microphone and I can try and steer the presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. I got that you were introducing my presentation. So thank you. And thanks also for inviting me to this event. My name is Margherita Guidi. I'm Engagement Officer in the Engagement and External Relations Unit. And today I will really give you a super brief introduction into community management benefits, I would say, and how this could potentially serve science. So if you go to my first slide. Yeah, what we like to do is to place engagement in the big picture. And what we like to say is that science is not impactful without engagement, which, if you like, it might sound as a strong statement, but at the end of the day, what do we mean? That, of course, we can have the best methodology, the best expertise, the best data, and the best scientists, but what we also need to consider is the context in which we are operating, which is indeed very complex, as it is quite clear from this slide. So there is a lot of complexity in society, a lot of expectations, a lot of different opinions and interest. And in this very complex context in which we are operating, complexity is also reflected in the complexity of science, because there is a lot of data, a lot of new methodologies coming up all the time, new products, techniques, and so on. So this means that what we have to be able to is to navigate through this complexity. And we clearly cannot do this alone. Do you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. So as I was saying, we cannot navigate through the complexity alone. And that's where engagement comes, in fact, into play. Engagement is there as an enabler of our activities, and here we included the three different domains where we operate. On the one hand, through engagement, we can support the quality of our scientific production. So, for example, if you think about the ways that we can reach out to our partners and stakeholders for gaining access to data and the evidence that they have, which can inform our risk assessment and therefore improve the completeness of our work. Reputation goes without saying, because we are serving the purposes of policymakers and society, and our engagement should therefore be reputable. And then finally, engagement is also something that can help us be prepared for the risk assessment challenges of the future. So all of this requires that we establish relations. And there are, of course, different types of relationships that we can put in place with the different actors of the ecosystem. And this means that every time we ask ourselves how to best interact and with whom and when in the risk assessment process. And we do this in multiple tools and modalities. The point is the fact of selecting the right one for the right purpose. So what we ask ourselves is, how can we leverage opportunities for cooperation with others? And this can be done, obviously, in different manners, through the creation of a new community, for instance, or for the deployment of a specific engagement activity, depending on the type of objective that we have. So we try to identify the relations for potential synergies with all the bodies and actors involved, but also considering the sensitivities when it comes to stakeholders. So this is the direct link to communities. And if you go to the next slide, what we have defined communities with, at least at EFSA, that's what the definition that we have adopted, because in fact, there are like several definitions of communities. But since we are managing communities since the very early stages of the creation of EFSA, what we believe communities are formal and informal structures that share a common purpose and vision. And within these common objectives, what we try to do is to learn how to work better together as we interact and collaborate regularly. So this is the definition that we have adopted. And in fact, on the right-hand side of this slide, you see that several of the communities that we manage are there since ever. The advisory forum, the focal point, but also the networks and the registered stakeholders. So if we come to the benefits of organizing our work and our relationship within communities, and you can go to the next slide, why are communities so important in establishing such relationships? First of all, because through communities, we can better define our needs as a community per se, but also as individual members of communities, and align our objectives that we want to reach together. Then we definitely have the possibility to share our knowledge, our expertise, our know-how on a given topic, being it scientific or any type. Then we have the opportunity to amplify our scientific impact, because what we can do is, apart from sharing it within the members of the community, is to use the networks of each member to amplify further whatever is the outcome of our discourse or our discussions or objectives, in fact, outputs of the community. It goes without saying, stakeholders engagement. The moment that we are interacting in a community, then we are prone to engage further. We are probably also able to reach new stakeholders or the interest of new people and hook their attention on the type of the discussions that we are holding and having in our community. And then definitely support each other and collaborate among each others. In this frame, we have set up at EFSA a community management cycle, which is, and you can go to the next slide. It's really a basic cycle, if you like, but it's an iterative cycle. And why do we say that? Because the moment that you are shaping up a community, you define your objectives, you define the needs, you define the members that are part of your community, then you would definitely need to run it, to nurture it. So ensure that the conversation and the discussions and the added value is there for every single member of the community, and not only to the recipients of the outcome of your community. But then on this, you also need to monitor and report on the outcome of the communities. And that's where the iterative element of the community comes. Because the moment that you monitor and assess how your community is going, you also have a moment of reflection where you think about how you are doing within your community, if you have reached the objectives that you initially set at shaping phase. If perhaps you have achieved those, but new ones have arisen, and therefore you might request or need to set up a new communities. I mean, very clearly, I link back to what Karine was saying about the networks. I mean, this went through an assessment procedure for which, for a moment, we stopped and reflected, do we need this community? So do we need this network? Is it achieving the right purposes, and et cetera, and et cetera? So this is just to give an example on a previous presentation that was given. But that's really important in terms of reflecting on the objective that you set within a community and possible adjustment that you would need to put in place for the future. And as an outcome of our reflections on communities and the work that we are actually doing on community management, we have also released an internal document, which is the Community Management Toolkit, which is mainly following all the different phases of the community management cycle, and is there to support our colleagues managing the different communities in all the different phases. So the shaping, the running, the nurturing, and the monitoring and reporting. And I know that now colleagues will probably dig a bit more further into the community management toolkit and the community management concepts. So from my side, as a brief introduction, I close here. Thank you very much for your attention, and I give you back the floor.